Hello, and welcome to the March 21st program, Local Women Making History, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, Grand Traverse Area. We are only able to share this conversation today thanks to our partnership with the Traverse Area District Library, our gracious hosts, and the Traverse Area Community Media, who provide technology and media support, making all of us look and sound great. I am League member Lauren Clark from Kalkaska, your moderator for today's program. The League of Women Voters is a national, nonpartisan organization. The League does not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties, but does work to obtain and distribute information to the public about candidates and their views. The League promotes the informed and active participation of all citizens in government. It works to increase the understanding of major public policy issues through education and advocacy. Membership in the League is open to women and men of all ages, and we offer a special discount for students. We are honored to have a live studio audience for this virtual presentation in celebration of Women's History Month. Our program today is being shown on Spectrum Cable Channel 189 in Northwest Lower Michigan, on our Facebook page at League of Women Voters Grand Traverse Area, and on the Traverse Area District Library YouTube channel. Today we welcome our guests, Brandie Ekren, Michelle Howard, and Rebecca Pierce. Brandie Ekren is the Executive Director of Traverse City Light and Power, a municipally owned electric and telecom utility. Prior to joining TCLP in March of 2022, Ms. Ekren worked at the Lansing Board of Water and Light since 2004, starting out as an associate attorney, advancing to General Counsel, and rounding out her career with Michigan's largest municipally owned electric utility as their Executive Director of Strategic Planning and Development. Ms. Ekren has extensive experience with strategic planning, renewable portfolios, strategic and innovative initiatives, including clean energy program development, revenue diversification, and microgrids, which will be a tremendous asset as the utility moves into the future. Ekren received a Bachelor of Arts with honors and a Juris Doctorate from Michigan State University. Michelle Howard is a graduate of Michigan State University and received her master's degree of Information and Library Science from the University of Michigan. Michelle and her family moved to Traverse City 24 years ago. She has been a librarian for almost 29 years, with the last 3 serving as the director of the Traverse Area District Library. Michelle also served 3 years as a city commissioner for the city of Traverse City, which included time as a planning commissioner. Michelle is actively involved in community organizations, including the Grand Traverse Children's Garden and the North Boardman Lake District. Rebecca Pierce is Executive Director of the Traverse City Record Eagle. A veteran of community news organizations across Michigan, she joined the Record Eagle in July of 2022. Graduating from the University of Michigan, she went on to work for numerous Michigan publications. She is an award-winning editor, writer, reporter, photographer, and accomplished public speaker, and is married to a Grand Valley State University adjunct professor of communications, and together they have 2 children. We ask those of you with questions to please hold them until the end of the program, if time allows. And now, I'd like to welcome League member Ann Magoon, founder of the Women's History Project of Northwest Michigan, who will be talking with Rebecca, Michelle, and Brandie. Welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. And I want to welcome all of you in the audience and thank our panelists for being here today and for taking time out of your busy schedules to step back a little bit from your professional work and tell us a little bit about your experiences, your insights, and your ideas about being a community leader. So often we think of a Women's History Month as a time to look back and to remember women's lives and celebrate their accomplishments in the past. But today we're happy to celebrate and recognize your accomplishments here and now and in Traverse City as you make your own history for us. Our viewing audience includes not only the people at the library today, but also the viewers at home, which include young women, young boys, young men, I hope, as well as some of us older women who have seen many changes in society through the years, and we are very excited about many of those changes and looking forward to hearing from you about how you see the community today. So you can give us all a peek into your lives, your experiences, and maybe your goals. So I'm going to start with a question for each of you, and if this is not timed in the sense of everybody gets exactly the same amount, I'm sure we'll all share fairly, but feel free if you want to go back and say more about a topic, okay? So first question for all of you, and we'll start with Brandie. So what does leadership mean to you? How would you define leadership as you understand it?
So leadership for me means the opportunity to inspire. I'm new to the area and the community. Actually, today celebrates my 1-year anniversary. I'm excited to say. But in order to be a leader, or when I think about being a leader, it's an opportunity to inspire and move another forward. And so whether it be somewhere professionally or personally, if there's any level of encouragement, and that might even be being able to create more leaders.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Well, I strive to bring people together, and I try to bring out the best in people. I love to collaborate, build bridges, identify problems, ask questions, seek the answers, affirm the importance of every person, and celebrate the victories and learn from the losses.
I hope you're all writing these things down.
I know.
All learn from these wonderful women.
No, I have to watch this later.
Michelle?
I think for me, leadership is also just being a great example and being open to, kind of like what Brandie said, is to help others. And so so I think everything I do, I always think someone might see that and feel inspired by it. Just like what Brandie said, but also to be someone important that people can look to, I think, and doing that by example, and being willing to do the hardest jobs and sometimes the most undesirable jobs, I think is an important thing for me as a leader.
Those are great responses, and we're going to build on those, of course, as we go along. So would you like to describe some of one or more leaders that have inspired you or have kind of helped set the way that you have approached your work? And we'll start with Rebecca.
Oh boy, there have been so many that I have watched in my life and admired, starting with my father, and then in my career as a reporter, the people that I encountered, just incredible people who were serving their community. And I think that was a common denominator of the people I revered, is that they were serving, and not necessarily in positions of great authority or what you would automatically perceive as somebody up high and above everyone else, but a lot of servant leadership and giving, always giving of themselves. That really stood out to me.
Michelle?
Sure. Well, I think it really started for me as I met so many librarians. Like I couldn't even name them all, but they were such an inspiration to me because the ones I met were always the kindest of people. And so that's kind of when I finally came around to realizing that I didn't want to be a lawyer and that I wanted to be a librarian. I was like, of course, I had all these amazing librarian, and they were all women in my life that inspired me to go on this career path. But I also have to say, my mom is like the biggest women leader in my life. She led a gang of 5 of us kids, and she didn't graduate high school. So I saw her graduate as a 7-year-old from high school, and then she ended up going to community college, and she worked, and she was our Girl Scout leader. And she did all these amazing things, and I know half the time she was running around and occasionally forget a child here or there at a practice. But it was just watching her lead us every day, and nothing stopped her. If she felt like she wanted to do it, an art class or whatever, she would do that. And so I think just always growing up with that positive woman in my life really changed how I saw what I could do too.
Brandie?
So what are characteristics or what leaders inspired me, right? I was so lost in the response here. I forgot what I was supposed to say.
Yeah, it's just people who have been inspiration to you.
So it's actually quite fascinating. You know, I was thinking about this over the past week when we were preparing for this event. And when I think of leadership or those that are leaders that are inspiring, there's obviously those people who are in the public eye, such as like Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey, people like everyone sees. And then there are people who are not really aspiring to be leaders, but they are leading. And I would say it would be teachers. That's what kept coming back to mind. You know, I definitely had really strong matriarchs in my family, and, you know, for my grandparents. But I would have to say probably one of the most inspirational leaders for me, and it is because they embody that inspiration, was probably my third grade teacher. And the reason why is because at the time, I was struggling academically. My attendance was horrible. You know, I recall, you know, struggling with the grades, but I always got that citizenship award. And I used to always think, oh, that's the consolation prize. That's a nice personality prize. And so I had to repeat third grade. And I just felt like a loser at the time. My parents were very supportive, and they didn't have any issues or concerns. But I do remember this one particular third grade teacher that made me feel like I was more than the previous grade I had, let me participate, and encouraged me. And I would say probably the most inspirational leaders in my life have always been teachers. Sometimes they're formal and sometimes they're informal. But I feel like it's a thankless job at times. But it really did make, I would say, a very pivotal moment of me being able to see that I can do anything, even if I felt like I was a failure, and recharacterizing what citizenship meant, and eventually being able to get really good grades as I kind of progressed through life.
I bet you'd still get good citizenship marks right now.
I look at that closely now.
Okay, so we've heard a little bit about your career path in terms of how you got to where you are, but I'd like to hear the real path about what led you to the accomplishments that you've had from the time you were a little girl. And you spoke a little bit about your mother, and you've spoken about your teachers and the people that you've seen in leadership, but a little bit more about your style as a child. Were you an activist? Were you a leader? Did you perceive yourself as a leader? Or at what point did the light go on?
You want me to start?
No.
So I was not I did not get the citizenship or anything award. I was like the quietest, shyest little kid you've ever met. And I would get really good grades, except for, like, it always said she needs to raise her hand more, which was terrifying to me. And so I made the decision. My parents let me decide where I went to high school, and I chose an all-girls high school. And I think that was the turning point for me. There was no boys. There was no, I had worn a uniform my whole life, but I didn't have to worry about clothes. And being surrounded by nuns is a little terrifying to some people, but it was a Catholic school, and it was just a very supportive environment. And in those roles, I finally started to flourish, and I ran for student council, and I started getting more active on the swim team, and just that's kind of where I started to realize I can do this. And just being surrounded by other women who were supportive kind of made the difference for me. So I kind of went on from there, and then I went to college and went to Michigan State, and just kept, every time there was a role, I would take it. Like nobody else would step up. Like, I'll do that. Oh, I can captain our synchronized swim team. I can be a manager at a restaurant. It's just like, it just kind of starts going where you're like, oh, why not me? And there you go.
Love that. Thank you. Rebecca.
Well, it's interesting. I was not a leader, and I was growing up at a time when women were not really in positions of power and authority. I was the first woman editor at the Kalamazoo Gazette, and in a very white male-dominated industry. So I didn't really seek leadership, but I cared so much about the mission, and there was so much loss that I witnessed as a reporter. Oh my, that what I did became more important than what I was. There was so much loss, and we still see it today. So there's something, I think there are people who are natural leaders, and then there are people who are thrust into that role. And I think I was kind of thrust into that role. But when you ask, who do you look at that you see as leaders today? And it's interesting that Brandie would say this. They're educators, they're teachers. And I think of Marilyn Schlack, who in the Kalamazoo area was the first woman president in Michigan of a higher education institution. I think of her and I look up to what she did and was able to accomplish. Deb Howell was my mentor. She was the Washington bureau chief and editor of Newhouse News Service. These were women in positions of power and authority. But growing up, I didn't have that to inspire me. But now I'm so happy that we do. What a wonderful thing that women are afforded that opportunity now when they never really were encouraged to do so before. So.
Right. Now, you speak of loss in Kalamazoo, and in what context do you mean that?
Oh, when I was working as a reporter, someone that I had great admiration for was killed, shot and killed in the line of duty. And I remember how hard it was to write that news story. And when I got done, I was shaking. And the next day, his wife came to the office, and the receptionist came back to my desk in the newsroom and said, "McCarthy's wife is here." And I was terrified. I thought, my God, have I caused any more harm or injury to this family? She came to thank me, and I will never forget that. At that moment, I realized how important it is what we do as community journalists, and I mean that differently from any other news you read and see, because the reason why I stayed with this kind of role is because I can look you in the eye, I can face you, and if I've done something wrong, you can tell me, because I see that as such an important role that we have left in this country and that we must preserve for the sake of our well-being. That's where the loss comes in. I've seen so much loss over the years, and it really is a crisis. I think it's a crisis for women. I think that the pendulum for women has swung the wrong way during the time I've been doing this job, and I see people nodding in the audience. Yes, and I believe, you can argue with me, and I would gladly debate you on it, that one of the reasons for that is because journalism and the practice of it is becoming less in those communities. It isn't being practiced in Kalamazoo anymore. That's why I'm here. But we need it for women, for our communities, for our children, for everyone. If we don't have that, we have no accountability, and we must have that. So, see, aren't you glad you asked me that question? I couldn't feel more strongly about it, and that's why I'm here. Traverse City is very fortunate. You have an engaged community that is paying attention to what's going on and asking questions. Good for you, good for you. You must. If you're engaged, then the whole health and well-being of the community is preserved. Now, I can't speak for state or nation, but at least here we can do that. And the idea that we can be a model for other communities that may not have that, they can see what we're doing and learn how they can do it in their communities. We can grow this, so I believe it.
Thank you. I think a lot of good ideas there that we'll hold on to. And Brandie, the question about how did you get from that third grade just getting going with your own self-confidence and onto the path that brought you here?
So I was extremely shy as a kid. If I could avoid sticking out, that was like goal in life. I never volunteered to run for like at least in elementary school, before high school, a student government, to organize a group. My confidence level was always I was always struggling. I'm still very shy, to be honest. But I do have to admit, and as a matter of fact, I probably ran from opportunities of leadership more so, and maybe even up as recently into my adulthood. But I went to an all-girls school as well, and I have to admit, it is probably one of the most enriching experiences that I ever had in my life. It is definitely a different dynamic, one that I wasn't looking for. As a matter of fact, I remember transitioning from middle school to high school, and it was the joke, oh, you're going to be going to the all-girls school. And I have to admit, I developed some excellent friendships that are still remain today, mentorships that weren't intentional, but it was an excellent opportunity. And then I carried, I think, that attitude on into college. I had opportunities to pursue leadership roles, but I always didn't really characterize myself as a leader. I really characterized myself more so as a caregiver. And so if the tone was changed in that I was caring for someone and helping a group, for some reason I glommed onto it a whole lot faster. Why? I don't know. I'm still sorting that out today. But going to college was a great opportunity for me, but there was always so much question. I applied actually as an engineering major, and then my first week of orientation, I went to no prof because I didn't know whether or not I could do it. And so I had continuously been kind of questioning, was this the right path for me? Was this the right thing? And really trying to reflect, well, if I'm taking care of somebody and I'm helping somebody move forward, then it works well. And when I started, I would say, my really first professional career leadership role, it was something that I wasn't ready for. I would say it came early in my practice career as a lawyer. I had only really been practicing for 4 to 5 years, and I got promoted to General Counsel for Michigan's largest municipal utility. That doesn't come with it comes with its own complexity of issues, but the success of that was really due to the people that were around me. I had engineers, secretaries, already leaders that said, and when I said, I don't think I'm ready, they says, yes, you are, and you're gonna be. And so that was really helpful to just keep pushing me out of my comfort zone. And so I always feel like I've always had secret angels that were whispering in my ear, you can go further. This is what you're doing. This is beneficial. As a matter of fact, when I got invited for this panel, the first thought I was thinking, I was like, well, I don't think I'm a community leader. I really think I just got up here. But, being able to kind of reflect, and if it definitely embodies those things that are dear to me in terms of inspiration and caring, then that will continue to be my path. But I did have some leadership roles definitely in law school. As a matter of fact, the biggest criticism I had was I kept holding myself back. And I'm still working on that today.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to come back to some of these ideas. And one of them that you just talked about a little bit was as your sense of yourself as a caretaker, and that's your style, whatever. So I'm going to ask Rebecca to start with reflecting on your style a little bit, and take it as you want. Also, in terms of your style in your position now, and also, do you see that as something that is transferable to other leadership positions in a different field, perhaps? And if you can reflect on that if you want.
Well, I am pretty different from the people that have gone before, because I really don't, I want to hear from others. To me, in my work, and I think this would apply to anybody, you want to work with your team. You want them contributing, because if you just see yourself reflected, you're not being very successful. You want to have everybody involved. So you want to see a multifaceted object that you produce, so that there is a contribution there. So I think of the word collaboration. And I think that's really important in life, in whatever work you do, and in whatever hobbies you have, that you're getting information, you're applying ideas from other people. So it's not just about you, it's about everyone. So I really collaborate. I want to hear what other people think. I like criticism. I think I'd rather hear criticism than praise, because I don't think we really get better if all we hear is praise.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Thank
But
you.
I do like to build people up, and boy, we just got a bunch of awards from the Michigan Press Association. It was in the paper, if you're paying attention. That's right. And we're going to celebrate. We're going to throw a party to celebrate, because if you do that kind of quality work, you should celebrate it, because that isn't something you want to take for granted. So you want to, appreciate your people and what they give and how much they do. But,
Great, thank you. Michelle?
Oh, sure.
Leadership style.
My leadership style, well, I just see one employee here, so maybe they should answer it instead of me. I know Erin's in back. But I really feel like my leadership style is to trust my employees, and same collaboration is just, especially at the library, we have so many amazing people that work here, and like I trust them, and I even trust them to fail. And I almost hope they fail a little bit, because I know that's for me the times of the biggest growth that I've come through is I've failed at something, or I thought I was going to fail, which really, that adrenaline of thinking like this is going down in flames, is really like takes you to your next level of performance, I feel like. And so I feel like just being able, I think by my staff feeling trusted has allowed them to explore other ideas, and knowing that if they fail, we'll just scoop ourselves up and try again. But I think we all work together really well as a team, and we bounce ideas off of each other. And I feel like being vulnerable to that, like they have seen me fail, even in front of my board. And I've had to say, I made a mistake on this. And so I think that vulnerability allows that open communication, even though they know in the end I'm the boss, and it does, come down on me. It's just knowing that they trust me, I think is important.
Great, great. Now, you've already identified yourself as a caregiver in your early days. Do you want to say anything more about now that you are
Yeah.
grown up?
So I would say my leadership style might be what's colloquially known as, I guess, transitional. So I love being able to set a very high-level vision for my groups and my team, with, I would say, some parameters of where I think we need to go. And then I like being able to kind of work with them on either a group approach or an individualized approach to kind of help move us forward. And then we just kind of adjust where we're going. One of the things that I would say that I've learned, and it's definitely through that authenticity, definitely being able to collaborate, is there is an opportunity to be this decision maker and ownership of an idea and where we're going with the result. And then there's an opportunity to make certain that you're collaborating and getting feedback from your team members. And so, in a nutshell, I would say the approach, like this, like popping up in my head, is this concept of stabilization, renewal, and growth. And I feel like that's something that's transferable no matter what discipline you're in, whether you're in law, whether you're in industry, whether you are in the community. And the whole concept behind that is, stabilization is being able, like I said, being able to definitely have that high level vision, but understanding where we are and what we're responding to. And renewal is like re-looking at everything. Is there a different way to do things? Not to say that the old way wasn't a good way. I think there definitely, there's evolution for a reason. But, you know, it is good to just kind of stop and figure out how do we refresh. And that is a pattern. It's something I'm really passionate about. And then being able to go from there. Knowing that change is inevitable. And so those are very high level, very generalized concepts. But in a nutshell, I would say my leadership style is very transitional. And it changes. It's fluid. It's being able to respond to what we're dealing with at the moment. And I do it with care. But I would say, if I was to describe it, that's how best I would describe it.
I'd like to have you continue along this line, because one of the things that we thought of when we were putting this program together was the fact that all three of your fields are going through transition, huge change. If you think back 20, 30 years ago, how journalism and information science and libraries and utilities were looking at the world and how they were perceived by people, very different from today. And so, Brandie, we'll start with you, talking about the challenges, perhaps, of not just change within the organization, but your environment that you are working in your case, maybe more than the others, but I think all of us are looking at the physical changes of our climate change world, as well as organizational and technological and all of that. That's not too much to ask.
In 30 seconds.
So take it however you want in terms of how you, looking at what you need to do or what your organization needs to do, and you said in general what your style is, but let's dig down a little bit and hear more about how you're doing it.
So, you know, for one, I would say I'm extremely passionate about the energy industry as a whole, and as well as the utility industry and the concepts of public ownership, community resilience. Those are things that are very near and dear to me, and it's obviously no secret. There is so much change happening within the utility and the energy world right now. I would say it's happening at a very rapid pace. To the point where it's challenging the traditional business models of utilities, whether you're going from a centralized utility to a decentralized utility. You're having additional partners. I would say my competitor nowadays is not necessarily the neighboring community or the neighboring utility, but it's technology and it's innovation and it's the customer and being able to respond. And so those are just a few of the changes that are going on. Being able to have a workforce that's ready and responsive to an evolving need. I would say not too long ago, I'd love to say a long time ago, but not too long ago, you got what you were given when it came to your utility service and your energy service. And if the lights came on, everyone was happy. If the rates weren't too high, we were even better. But nowadays, we want more than that. And we should want more than that. You know, industry is uncertain. There's a lot going on with respects to the business model. You've got innovation that's aspiring, and then you have planet health that's at peril and that needs balance right now. And the discussion, I would say, within my industry or my topic is, well, can you have affordable, clean electricity as well as be able to make certain it's reliable? And the discussion, unfortunately, I would say up until the past few years has been they cannot coexist. And with, I would say, the movement and the evolution of innovation, we're now realizing that, yes, they can exist. And how do you do that? So we know we want to work on those things, but the next question becomes, how are we, our teachers, being able to bring up those youth to continue to solve those problems? But most specifically, how do we create a situation where we're not going to be stagnant again for a good period of time, fight resistance and fight change, and just continue to evolve? So I hope I answered the question, but I feel like the change is just in the conversation. Transition, those are key words. Doing things differently. It is very exciting, I would say. It's an excellent opportunity, but most specifically, it's the energies industry opportunity to remain relevant and do something that leaves a legacy. I don't know if we've always seen that in the past.
Great, great, thank you. Michelle, we're going to jump to you.
Sure. So, libraries continue to be what they've always been in community centers. And the book that you and Ann did, it's just, I was reading parts of it again the other weekend. And, we've always been that community hub. And we see technologies come in and out. And there was 20 years ago, people said, like, oh, no one's going to read a print book. And really what we see is Generation Z doesn't read electronically if they can avoid it. So we're seeing this whole generation of people just loving print books and just adoring it. So it's like we've always had these kind of like threats to us. And we see change all the time, like our library of things. It's like, of course, we check out books. Why wouldn't we check out a guitar? Which, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, people would have been like, a guitar at my library. But it's our business model is to get people, the things they need in our community. And so we continue to do that. We continue to be a community space. One huge change we're seeing right now is just basically librarians are on the front line of a culture war right now. And it's super hard for us. Emotionally, it's draining, but of course, what do we do as librarians? We read. So there's lots of reading about First Amendment. Most of us are diehard First Amendment people, and the most important thing to us is protect your right to read what you want to read, and no one can tell you you can't read it. And we're just openly under attack. Like the librarian at Lapeer District Library, if you've read Bridge Magazine, the prosecutor is threatening to arrest her and charge her with a felony because of a book. And so these are just really strange times for us. And so the library community is really great at communicating. And so just being with our peers, and I'm sure that's what, Brandie and Rachel do too, is like you understand, you learn from each other. And so we're hoping that we'll survive this, and people will get tired of challenging books and challenging what we do. But that's kind of it. Does that answer your question? I feel like I just, like Brandie, I'm like, oh, I really got going on that.
Sorry, I know. We were like talking. It was like, what was the question again?
Yes, okay. I think I got stuck on the First Amendment in there. But I think libraries are always going to be here, and we're loved community spaces. And all over, you hear people talk about how much they love their public library, and so that's what we hope we continue to do.
Great. And if you don't know about the Library of Things, go to the website and learn. It's not just guitars. Lots of
Laptops, household items, cake pans. It's pretty fun.
Right, thank you. So Rebecca, you are in a field that has...
I just called you Rachel. I'm sorry. I didn't say Rebecca. Sorry about that. Braden.
It's interesting listening that there's a synergy here, because news is a utility as well. And the purpose is to provide citizens with the information they need to make the best possible decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their governments. But we are awash in information. We are just drowning in it. The vast majority of this communication, however, is not news. And about 70% of just email traffic is spam. And this is according to a web security company, Symantec. And notice I'm giving you, I'm giving you my source, so you can check me out, okay?
You could be a librarian, too.
That's what journalists do. We authenticate the information. And this is 2012, which is quite a while ago. There were an average of 175 million tweets a day, but almost all, 99% of that consisted of, and I quote, pointless babble. This is according to Carnegie Mellon University. So journalism occupies a much smaller space than the talk, the entertainment, the opinion, the assertion, the advertising, and the propaganda that dominates the media universe. But it is nevertheless perceived as journalism. What we're doing here at the Record Eagle is perceived as being more valuable than the stuff out there. And the value flows from its purpose to provide people with verified information they can use to make better decisions, and its practices, the most important of which is that systematic process, a discipline of verification that journalists use to find not just the facts, but also the truth about the facts. So that gives you kind of my foundation, and how I apply that is education. We're working all the time in our newsroom to educate our reporters, our staff, to help them keep up and do better. We want to be ahead of everybody else so we can help inform them about what's going on so they can be smart. But, you know, that is a constant challenge. It's, we are awash in information. And that's what I love about this place, because we got people calling us and going, did you see? Did you know? And if we don't know, we're going to check it out for you. So, or for us. But so there is this constant, it's a very dynamic environment, and we've just got to keep up and try to provide what everybody needs. But it's a big challenge, and we're walking it together. The more readers we have, the better we are, and the better we serve all of you. But there may be some things I pick up today that tell me that we need to be doing a particular story or reporting on something that we haven't done yet. But we are there, and it's important that we're close to the community. That's what we're about. So my job is to help keep that, keep those wheels spinning.
Right, right. Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about challenges that you've experienced. And you mentioned failure, but you don't need to tell us your failures if you don't want to. But what are some of the challenges that you have faced? You can be as specific or anecdotal as you want to. And do you think that you have faced different challenges as a woman than a man in the same position would have faced? Michelle?
Sure, that is a tough question. Of course, when I became the director, 5 months later, I closed the library for the first time ever. So we've had just those challenges, and then we thought we were going to be in a complete recession, and so yeah, I feel like maybe someday I'll have a normal year. I'm probably just jinx us all. I'm knocking on 2023 to be less challenges, but I think sometimes as a woman we are, part of my challenges, either as a director or just throughout the time as a city commissioner or any time, is sometimes I feel like we are some of our worst, the things that are, how do I say this? We have both men competing with us, but sometimes our harshest critics are women. And I was feeling validated today when I read an article about it, because I'm like, do I say that out loud today? And it is validated, is that women are sometimes the meanest to other women. And I've always said that to my daughter, worry about a man, yeah. I go, but the person who will really get you will be a woman. And I hate to say it, but it is true, and I see you guys nodding. But at the same time, there's amazing women out there who support you, and so sometimes if I hear a woman say, "Oh, all my friends in high school were men or boys," I'll be like, "Oh, that's my type of girl," because it's we surrounded ourselves by people who protected us, and so I think there's so many amazing women in this town. That gather randomly, and I'm just going to say her name, Jean Dorenzi, is awesome. And so we have these women, and you just got to find the right ones, because if you don't have the right ones, they will really take you down. I don't know, do you want to add anything? I'm feeling on the spot, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But I think we have to raise our women up, and that's why things like this are so amazing, to sit with two wonderful other women and our young women, and know that we have to do it. It doesn't happen unless we do it. And so whether they want to be a leader or not, we just have to support these women.
Right, right. Well, we'll talk more about younger women coming up.
Okay, good.
Rebecca, do you want to tackle this one, some of the
boy.
challenges and whether?
Actually, my challenges have been different, and I guess I never really thought much about being a woman. I just was so focused on what my role was as a journalist. But some of the problems I had were really weird. Like, I was interviewing Dick Headley, remember the Headley Amendment guy?
Oh,
And I asked him a question he didn't like, and he grabbed me by the head.
My God.
And I'd never had that happen before. And I think about it now and I wonder, if I'd been a man, would he have grabbed me by the head? But then he wouldn't let go of my head. And I'm standing there and I've got my notepad and my pen and he's got my head, but he didn't like the question. And I wish I could remember what that question was. But, I pulled my head out of his hands and I asked the question again, and he answered it. But all I remember is getting my head grabbed. But here's the other weird thing. It happened another time.
What?
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is, but, and it was another man. And this time I was in an audience, and he was giving a speech, and I was in the front row. He grabbed my head.
What is going on?
I don't know. I'm beginning to think it's me. But anyway,
I have soft hair.
I like being here because nobody has grabbed my head.
That
So
won't
as
happen.
long as that continues, you got a positive. But see, the experience of journalism is so different. I mean, there's a lot of synergy here, but there's also a role that's really unique, and it's really important. And we need to, the thing I feel most strongly about is those trained journalists are more important than any, people think we're talking about paper, newspaper. It's not paper, we're all over the place. We're online, if you want it beamed into your head, we'll figure out a way to get it to you, okay? But the most important thing are those reporters out there asking hard questions that get their heads grabbed, okay? Now, the way we are, that would be actionable, That would be an assault.
Absolutely.
But back in the day when I was starting out, they didn't, it wasn't like that. You didn't have that level of awareness even. So I think we've moved positively towards being more aware of what's appropriate. No matter what, if you're a woman or a man, that kind of treatment is just unacceptable. And we're not going to tolerate that. So that's good. So.
I don't know if you can top that one, Brandie.
I can't.
Can you just reaffirm what I was saying? Because I'm feeling really insecure about that.
I do. Actually, Michelle, I want to circle definitely to that. What Michelle was talking about. It's interesting when we say challenges, I think of barriers that are keeping us from moving forward. And so I do want to talk a little bit about that. But also, to Michelle's point, I would agree. I feel like we women are the hardest on each other as well as ourselves. I think, and I don't know if it's a product of our gender, but I would say I don't think it's a challenge, so to speak. And I don't know if it's because I went to an all-girl high school that was very empowering at the most critical stage of your life while you're developing, and so it really didn't matter. But I would say that I do feel like as women, and actually I'm going to spin this on a strength-based perspective, I think we want the very best for ourselves. And we want each other to be doing well. Sometimes it comes across in a nurturing manner, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's very critical, and it can be very mean. And so, I've experienced that on that particular level, and I think it's just something that is worth acknowledging, and it definitely underscores the value of having, I would say, I'm going to go and say sisterhood, and being able to support one another. I think it goes a long way because it helps us look past that. I used to, gosh, my husband might kill me, but I used to say, I was like, gosh, I just don't get it. I swear you men just like wing it. And then like with me, I feel like I got to have like a 12-point plan and everything's got to be like exactly laid out. And I, over the years, now that I'm raising sons, I have a difference of opinion. But I would say that I think it's something that's real for us. I think as a culture, we need to be mindful of it, the value of being able to support one another, have those groups just to talk to. And then as far as like challenges, I would say some of the challenges that I've incurred over my professional career has been, I say, transitioning roles. So when I transitioned from my general counsel role at my utility, I was in that role and at the C-suite level for about 13 years. And then when I switched over to that strategic planning business development role, it was an interesting transition, predominantly because as general counsel over time, you just have like a level of authority. Everyone just believes what you say. And so you come in like, this is the law, this is how it should happen, and whether or not it's the law or not, you made it the law, and they believed you. And it was amazing. Over the span of a weekend, I lost that authority. I was still at a C-suite level position, but I had to reapproach things very differently. It wasn't just, this is what the law is. This isn't just what Brandie said, so to speak, anymore. I had to approach everything about my job in a completely different fashion. I went from writing memos to PowerPoints, talking very succinctly to just like being able to have some visuals. And so those are some challenges that were great challenges. But I would say that is probably, if I would pick out when you said the word challenge, that was the challenge, because I didn't have that level of authority that I had previously, and I had to learn how to influence without that level of authority.
Interesting, yeah. That transition, I can imagine that weekend for you. And I'm just going to reflect for a moment. The League of Women Voters is that, organize, get all the facts, get the sources, evaluate everything, and very much what all three of you are into. And we've been around for over 100 years, and I give credit to the women who have taken that maybe plodding but effective way of making better citizens throughout our world. So just a side note there. Okay, now we're going to talk about how you would speak to younger women today, and whether it's a daughter or a relative or the women in school deciding about where they're going to go. Just thoughts, ideas about what advice you would give to ambitious young women, or maybe to not so ambitious young women. And we'll start with Rebecca, I believe.
Okay. I feel like, and I agree with, I'm taking notes because you guys are really saying some really meaningful things that I want to take with me. But I think it's best to treat all people with professional courtesy at all times. I've seen it's been so hard with the pandemic and people being so isolated that I've noticed people are just struggling, not everybody, but there are a lot of people that are really having trouble. And we need to talk to each other. We need to listen more than we talk, and try to not to judge people so quickly. There's so much partisan stuff, and it gets in the way of really trying to have meaningful discussion. And I think, too, that people may not have a full story. They're getting their information from places that may not be very reliable. And if they're listening, they might learn something that may change their point of view. But if we're not trying to communicate effectively with each other, we won't overcome those problems. So I would say don't be so quick to judge, and form your own opinions. If you have experience, you sometimes can trust your gut, But I don't know. There's a saying in my business, if your mother says she loves you, check it out. You know? And I think that's pretty wise advice. Are there barriers to women moving up? Yes, absolutely. And those barriers are people, and in many cases, other women, and their attitudes. And so, you know, we need to find a way to teach and reach people so that those attitudes become less of a barrier. So I think also my advice would be, as you raise children, don't raise them so they don't grow up pigeonholing women into subordinate roles or objectifying them, because that is so prevalent in our. You go online and that's all you see is all this stuff, and it's not very good. But that would be the advice I would give.
Thank you. Thank you. Brandie, do you want to tackle that? You say
Yeah.
you have 2 sons at home, but you could project out to the
Yes,
women you want to be your daughters-in-law.
absolutely. And project out to my sons too, because the men have a huge success factor, I think, and our factor too. I'm going to build off of what Rebecca was sharing, and actually I'll say remembering kindness. Kindness, I would say, is the common denominator of progress. We are living in a very polarized age, I agree. And if we can approach everything with kindness, I think that helps us with judgment. It's amazing how far we can go with just being kind. And the advice that I would give to a young lady, whether they're adolescent, elementary school, older than me, or the same age, is try to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because there are opportunities, and sometimes you are thrusted in a leadership role, whether you were seeking it or not, and learning that it is okay to be uncomfortable and that something good will happen. Everything is for a reason. If it's something that you're passionate about, I would say that's one of the things that I would focus on. Be comfortable being uncomfortable, and be kind. Just be kind.
Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, I want to build on what Brandie was saying earlier, too, about us being our own worst enemies. And if I could tell something to a young woman, it would just be to just have positive self-talk. I grew up, and I do it all the time, is I hear myself say, "Are you sure? I don't know if you can do that." And it's just like, I do it all the time. And so if we could build in some resiliency for our young people to be able to tell themselves, "I can do it. Why not me?" I think that could go such a long way, because I do think some of the times where I'm like, I didn't do that right, is because I question myself. And then also to teach them to do it for other people, to just be that person who's like, yeah, and go write a book, or however it is. And to teach our sons too, to support those around them, whether it be women or boys, is to support others, and also just to support yourself.
Right, right. And we don't want to forget the boys growing up and how they can learn to respect changes in society and respect their female peers. We didn't have role models growing up. By that I mean, at my age, the word role model had not been part of the conversation, or mentors. We didn't know that we didn't have role models because we didn't know the word. But I think we've made a lot of progress in that vein. So I think one of you mentioned, or at least I got the sense of, I think it was Rebecca mentioned early, how intense and how passionate you were. And I know that your position, because you have to put out a newspaper every day, has a level of intensity that is always on deadline. And I know that with climate change and with cultural change, that the other two of you also face intense pressure. So how do you balance? How do you unwind? How do you balance your work life with your personal life? How do you step back? And I lost track. I think we're going to start with Brandie.
Well, I do a lot of that self-talk that Michelle mentioned. and it's just kind of that calming down, taking a moment for certain. But I really enjoy gardening and messing around with my plants. I love playing with my sons. Well, I guess they're getting older now, but I do enjoy the opportunity to hang out with kids and just play Lego and cars and do things that I would say are off script from what happened on the 9 to 5. That's probably the best way for me to turn it off. I love superheroes and science fiction. Michelle and I know we love Mandalorian. And so anytime I can get into any of those spaces, it usually is a really nice, healthy balance, I would say.
And you, Michelle?
Of course, I read, right? Like if I didn't say that answer, I'd probably be in trouble. But I love to read, and sometimes actually, like during the pandemic, when I was the most stressed, I couldn't read. I just couldn't. I couldn't settle my brain down, so I listened to audiobooks. And so I read a ton. I also have a group of like my sisters, like my friends that are sisters that we exercise together, and we hike and we bike and we swim, and I think if I didn't have that release of exercise for me, it would be really hard. I love being outside, and so I just think we're so lucky to live here, because if you're having a bad day, you can just walk down to the bay and it's all gone. You just watch the water. And then just a little secret is, are you really good at breathing exercises? So if you walk into my office and hear some heavy breathing, that means it's a bad day. And I am trying my best to belly breathe, and I do my counts and to try to get that out. So that's a very practical thing that I do, but that's kind of how I balance it, and I just try to have fun when I'm not here.
We should have done that before the panel
Oh,
today.
yes.
How about you, Rebecca?
Well, I answered the question, maintain a balance, ha. Escape stress, ha. Advice I'd give to my younger self, exercise every day. We all need to exercise. And I don't mean, whatever works for you, but you can sit at your desk and move your legs or something. But I am flunking right now on any of that kind of stuff. But I figure I've got a little time here because I'm new, and so I've got to figure it out. And any advice, tips, people who've lived here for a while about where to go and how to find that stress reliever, let me know, because I'm looking for ideas, because I'm still trying to find out where the bathrooms are. I don't know. I get lost, I'm really good at getting lost, so I drive around and I learn things by getting lost. So, but yeah, I haven't figured out the balance yet.
Okay. Well, that'll be a project for you,
Yes.
I'm sure, coming up.
We have books on that. Books on finding that. I'll send one over to your office.
Okay. Well, I think we could talk all afternoon, but as I recall, you each have important jobs to do. And so we're going to try to wrap this up, but we do have time for a couple of questions. If anybody in the audience has anything else that is in line with women in leadership that you want to ask these wonderful people today, there's a microphone right there waiting for you. I don't have my glasses on. I can't see whether you're looking like you're going to ask.
I think they are speechless.
You can identify yourself if you want to.
We-
First of all, I wanted to thank you for being so open. This has just been wonderful. I wondered, is there an organization in town that maybe supports women leaders? Is there anything going on? And if not, it seems like you would all benefit. It seems like you're enjoying this conversation too. And there's lots of you out there, and many who are new in the job. I've not heard of one, but
I think Traverse Connect has a women leader group for people who are new to the community, and of course their leadership Grand Traverse, right, is another one. I can't think of. I don't know. I feel like we should have something. No, I don't know what Zonta does.
Zonta is women leaders.
Oh, good.
And I think there might be 2 of those groups in town to explore. The League of Women Voters also.
I know.
I was going to say that.
It's at the
Leaders
top of my
together.
list. It's at the top of my list to join again.
Right. Well, do you have a question, Alice?
So, and thank you all very much. This has been absolutely informative. So I just wonder, before I retired, some of my friends, we each had our little like mantra. Like a friend of mine had a kind of cross stitch on her desk that said, "Did you remember to feed the birds today?" And that was her reminder to go out and nurture her staff every day. That she said if she didn't have it in front of her, you get to the end of the day and you've done 50 other things, but not maybe the most important. Mine was just be nice. It wasn't nearly that elegant. But do you have just like a little words of wisdom that you share with yourself to pull you back to being your best leadership self?
Take it away.
I have a sticker on my desk that says basically something like, "What have I done to make the world better today?" So
That's big.
I know it's kind of a big task. Maybe I needed to make it smaller.
So for me, what kind of, I guess I've got like a plaque, and I am a faith-centered individual, and so, or spiritual, I would say, so probably more spiritual, and I say my thing that always comes to mind is just trusting God. And so wherever you are on your belief spectrum and how that is, I feel like it's relevant. And so for me, it's what's important to me, and those are the words that come to mind when I'm struggling.
I'm a smart aleck. You've already figured that out. And mine, at least the one that came to mind, is you know that women have arrived when a political leader who's a woman can be as big a hack as any man. So,
Good armor.
yeah.
Right. Well, I want to.
I'm sorry. Are there any other questions?
Right.
Yeah.
More questions.
When Ann asked you the question about leadership models throughout your life, people who had been in your life that were good examples for you, I was trying to answer that question for myself in my own head. And I came up with a heck of a lot more people who were poor quality leaders that I knew I did not want to be like. And I'm wondering if you can just address that a little bit, because I'm sure the same was true for you, that you saw people who you were sure were not doing it right. And what were they doing that you learned from?
I'll take that. I wouldn't say necessarily there were leaders that weren't doing it right, but I would say on a daily basis, think to myself when I have a challenge or a situation with my team or my employees, what would I have wanted my previous bosses to do that they didn't do? So maybe that's the thing that calms me, actually. So that I feel like that is something that comes to mind. If I could go back and they did it differently, what would I have wanted them to do? And let me try it out.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I ran for office, is I saw leaders doing things that I didn't agree with. And I also had, many of you know, my mother-in-law, Jean Howard, who had ran for office at various levels of school board. And so I had this woman who had done it, who had made it, who ran for office and won. And actually, we were campaigning. I was pregnant with my oldest, and we were campaigning for her. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm never going to do this. This is terrible. But I think I saw people making decisions that I didn't agree with. So I thought, well, this is how I'm going to fix it, is I have to get in that position, and I have to be the person who makes that decision. And so that's why I originally applied and was appointed. If I say the date, you'll know why, 2016, and to City Commission, because I was like, I have to try to make a difference locally. And so then I was elected in 2017.
Rebecca.
Oh, there were some pretty bad characters. And you feel good that you were able to survive that kind of management, because it was bad. But I really don't like thinking about it, because I don't want to give it power in my life, it's just kind of depressing to think about that. But it's not that way anymore, so it's gone. We got rid of it, But the hiring was poor. And that was a huge change when you put women in positions of power where they can affect hires, and you get a more diverse newsroom. You've got a much better newspaper right off the bat. And that was something that happened with women moving into those positions. But the other thing, too, is good training for women, so they know how to manage. That isn't something you're born doing. I mean, you've got to learn how to do it. And luckily, I worked for a company that provided that kind of training. So, yeah, I focus on the good. Always think about that good stuff.
Wow. There's so much that came out of this today. I'm so glad that I was able to be a part of it, and I feel like we have we know more about these three wonderful leaders. So thank you so much for participating. And audience, thank you for being here. You've enriched it, and please, because this is available, maybe you're going to talk about that. I'll let you talk about that. But I just want to thank you again for this great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Many thank yous to Rebecca, Brandie, and Michelle, and to our audience for tuning in today and for being here in person. We thank you for taking the time out of your day to share it with us. Also, thank you to Erin Olson from the Traverse Area District Library, Matt Kern, and Joe Torrance from Traverse Area Community Media. To find out more about the League or to join, please visit our website at leagueofwomenvotersgrandtraversearea.org. Our April program will discuss the pros and cons of a national popular vote method for determining elections. Christina Schlitt, co-president of the League of Women Voters Michigan, will be our presenter. If you could please take a few more moments and help us by completing the evaluation form that you were either handed when you came in, or we have some more for you to fill out on your way out, we would really appreciate that. Thank you again for spending time with us. Tell your friends about this program. It is available for viewing at any time, again, on the Traverse Area District Library YouTube channel, the League of Women Voters Grand Traverse Area Facebook page. And that's it. Thank you very much. Oh, it is on TADL, on Spectrum 189. We can watch later. Oh, okay. Okay, see, you learn something every day. Thank you again for being here, and have a wonderful afternoon. Happy Women's History Month, everyone. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.